we're very grateful to Alex Pittles, one of our contributors, and he says, hi, Ken and Rory, and everyone on this great page. Well, thank you very much. I've just joined, so someone just knew and said, I'm really enjoying the podcast. Well, I hope you enjoy the name check, Alex. I'm learning so much and finding it helpful. I've applied for bereavement placements and was wondering if you could share your experiences and some theory on this, please, in one of your future podcasts. I've had a quick look and don't think you've covered this yet. Ooh. Well, we're going to cover it today because you asked, Alex. And there are quite a few different models of bereavement therapy. The one that makes most sense to me, and the one that is considered quite authoritative, is called the dual process model. And it was developed by Margaret Strobe and Henk Schutt. And I think they were Dutch. Researchers. And then basically, it's an oscillation model. So if you think of, if you draw a circle and you think of that as a person, then you draw two other circles next to each other, one that says loss orientated and one that says restoration orientated. And we're going to put a picture in the show notes. People oscillate between the feelings and the experience of loss, but also about the movement forward and how they're going to change their life. And one of the great things about this model is that by having a look at the model, you can see exactly where clients are and work within that, because we're client-led. So if a client's talking about the grief and the feelings of loss, then you work with that. If the client then talks about new roles, new relationships, how their lives are changing because of the loss, then you work with that. And it's called a dual process model. And interestingly, the theory says that if people get stuck in the middle of this oscillation, it's where they may very well have more difficulties and may need maybe to see a psychiatrist, because they may have difficulty. They may deny completely that the person's died. They may say the person's not died. And they may be stuck in between this cycle of understanding the grief and working through it and also moving forward. So yes, it's called the dual process model, Margaret Strobe and Henk Schutt.
It's interesting because loss, bereavement is something that you will come up against time and time again. And it can show itself in so many different ways. I mean, one of the ways is somebody can come in and say, I've lost somebody recently and I'm struggling with that loss. But it can also come up with people that have lost people a long time ago and haven't gone through grieving correctly. They haven't got over it and it's still with them. And it can be tricky in some ways that when somebody comes in for maybe an issue with their day-to-day lives, you can maybe work with that client and they can find a way forward, a way of getting over that and overcoming it. And you can see that movement and they can come out and go, wow, I really feel better now because I went to counseling and I found a way forward. But with loss, you can't bring the person back no matter what you do. And it's difficult because the person's gone and they're gone forever. And it's more about the acceptance of that, which is a very, very different kind of process. Now, Rory, you kicked off today's episode speaking about a lecture in the counseling study resource. And I'm going to mention another lecture in the counseling study resource in our CSR. There is a working with loss and bereavement lecture that Rory did. It is exceptional. And it does come with a CPD certificate of 1.5 hours. It really, really is good. So if you are a CSR member, log in and have a look at that because it's really, really useful. If you're wondering what CSR is, it's a paid for part of what we offer at Counseling Tutor. We do a lot of stuff for free, but we do have a paid for side to our business as well. And more about that at the end of today's episode. Will give you all the information you need on that if you want to go and check that out. But loss, you're going to see it in practice. It is tricky, and it can be tricky for you as well. You need to look at your own losses within your own life and work with that to be able to be there with a client that may be bringing loss in. And there's a number of different ways of working with loss. Rory, you've spoke of one, but there's also different kinds of loss, complex loss, and the people getting caught up and, as you say, not getting over the person being gone. Some people still acting as if those people are still around, kind of what is it? creating like shrines to the people that are
called mummification.
That's it. I was looking for that word, Rory. I remember it from your lecture, and I was going, where is it? This is why it's so important to revisit those lectures time and time again. But a really interesting and complex topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, loss isn't always about death. It can be loss of health, loss of jobs, loss of anything where a part of someone that is meaningful it may not be any longer available to them for a number of reasons. So yes, we sometimes think of bereavement as death, but there can be huge amounts of losses. And you're absolutely right, Ken. It can be that someone presents in practice talking about something, and actually they're talking about a loss in their history, not particularly something that's happened in the recent times.
Yes.
So we have to be acutely aware of that.
And it's interesting how that can be jarred within a person. You can find that the client maybe lost a parent maybe 10 years ago, and they say, well, there was nothing I could do. I had to be strong for the kids or whatever it may be, and we got through that period. But they may lose an animal. They may lose a pet dog now and be in absolute bits about it, because recent loss keys into our past loss. And with this question that came in, a really good question, it seems like you may be in a placement where the kind of client that may be presenting with bereavement and loss, and it's worth doing some CPD on secondary loss, where the person may have just lost somebody, but their day-to-day life of what they have to deal with now, how they're going to pay for their car, how they're going to pay their rent, how they're going to get by, maybe they lost the breadwinner, becomes the bigger thing that they might bring into the therapy room. And it's about being able to work with that, presenting issues as they are then. Sometimes people don't have the luxury of being able to grieve for that person because they got life to get on with and kids to look after, and it can be really tricky.
It can, and also it can come up in those colleagues who work with alcohol and in drug services, because don't underestimate when someone decides to stop using drugs or alcohol. That can be a huge loss. I can remember a conversation with someone who'd been a heroin user for most of his adult life, 30 years, who decided to go into rehab, and he said it's just like having a wife. That was his exact words.
Yeah. And
the loss of it was phenomenal. So yeah, there's a lot more loss than just someone dying, which is serious enough, and it comes up in our practices more than we sometimes realize, I think.
Oh, very much so. And a example of that just springs to mind is when somebody comes to the end of their working life and they may retire, and it's, oh, great, I've got this retirement now and I'm going to do the garden and paint the shed and go on that holiday that I wanted to go on. But all of that becomes over very quickly, and then they're left with the day-to-day loss of their life that they had, and the job that they had, and the value that they had within that job, and how they were seen within that job, and all of that is gone. And that is a massive loss. So many different flavors, I guess, of loss that we work with as therapists. What a question.
Yeah, it's a great first question. So congratulations there, Alex. You're a new poster, and you posted a really super question. So keep asking them is what I'd say.